In the vast world of Yuri, there are all sorts of meaningful scenes that you could argue reshape the entire story. For example, you have the truth and ambition of Loreley in Whisper Me a Love Song, or Kaori's true motive in The Summer You Were There, and the list goes on and on and on. In their own unique ways, various Yuri moments have reshaped the entire story, sometimes even in just one panel. But to me, there is only one scene that has had such a large impact on me that I think about pretty often. Something that made me pause, think about the story in retrospect, then sit with it. That being a single panel, one that came in the form of a bombshell in the middle of chapter 131 of How Do We Relationship. But before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed. We're trying to hit 10K by the end of this year. And if you enjoyed my content and you've been here for a while, consider becoming a member. You'll get access to all videos early. And with that said, let's begin. Before we can actually talk about this panel and its significance, we need to get everyone on the same page regarding the events leading up to this. To start with, we need to revisit the earlier chapters, the most crucial one being chapter 34. In chapter 34, this is where Miwa and Saeko's relationship reaches the point of no return. There is a clear lack of communication, and at this point, even feelings. When shit hits the fan, rather than sitting down and communicating, the couple instead chooses to engage in sex, leaving numerous issues unresolved. One of the main conspirators of this is Saeko herself. Saeko, on more than one occasion, chose to bottle in her feelings, no matter how painful, instead of choosing to just be open with Miwa. This would lead to some pretty infamous moments like chapter 17, where Saeko tries to internalize her ever-growing jealousy rather than being open about her issues. And though I don't want to be the one to say it, as I absolutely love Saeko to death, this was mostly a problem on her end. It isn't that Miwa never tried to hear her out. She did, multiple times actually, but Saeko never left room for that. While Saeko would classify her issues as being childish, Miwa would see past that front, understanding that there's something deeper there that leads Saeko to act in the ways that she does. The things that she won't say outright, Miwa picks up on. Time and time again, no matter how much she hides, how much she lies, Miwa sees straight through her. And believe it or not, that was Saeko's biggest problem in this relationship. Miwa's ability to understand her no matter what got under her skin. It's for this reason why, amidst many other things, in chapter 34, Saeko breaks up with Miwa. And her speech at the end of the chapter puts everything into perspective. It's all my fault for not telling her everything when I had the chance. But I was so afraid that if she saw how unlikable I was, she'd reject me. So afraid. I was so scared that I couldn't be with her anymore. So please, let's just leave our dating behind and go back to just being plain friends. And after this chapter, the story takes a turn. Miwa and Saeko for the next 78 chapters pursue other people. And this is where the title shifts into gear. How do we relationship? These 78 chapters consisting of failure, learning how to be more transparent, figuring out what went wrong and why is exactly what was needed for this pair. But rather than focusing on the individual relationships of both characters, we will be focusing on Saeko. If you want to see Miwa's POV, you guys can check out my last How Do We Relationship video. Now, regarding the changes that Saeko has during her time spent with Yuri, there are an infinite number of things I can highlight. Saeko changes in all sorts of ways. She matures, she becomes more content with her voice, and the list goes on and on. But in context with everything thus far, we must focus on chapters 94 to 95. In chapter 94, Saeko visits Yuri's hometown, and once questioned about herself and the things that she's passionate about, she's greeted by an outburst from Yuri. Yuri's dream is to become a hairstylist, and Saeko 100% supports that. Though it often compromises their relationship, Saeko always supports, giving Yuri her 100%. But in doing that, she doesn't focus on herself or her own future. This results in a slight argument between the two, with the attention being on Saeko and her lack of emphasis on herself. And just like how she often did with Miwa, throughout this interaction, there were multiple times where Saeko didn't truly say what she wanted. But realizing that, she pushes through, deeply stating how she doesn't want them to end up with problems unsolved, a direct contrast to how things were with Miwa. And though you could view this as a subtle moment of natural character development, this is much deeper. This is Saeko acknowledging and confronting something that went out of control in her previous relationship. And even beyond just that, she's bearing herself, getting her true feelings out in the way that she's grown to know how. This segues us into chapter 131, the one scene that reshaped this Yuri manga. Sitting there on the bench with Miwa, Burned out from their exploration of the school's festival, the question of, are you guys dating, is thrown at Saeko. And rather than rejecting it, like she's done many times following her breakup with Yuri, she chooses to answer it in an honest manner. At my core, she's the one protecting me. She's the one saving me. No matter what nasty, bitter things I say to her, she looks me straight in the eye and faces it head on. That part of her really got under my skin. I hated it, so I broke up with her. And I could have sworn that I was done being in love with her. But then, now, all those feelings are coming back, and I'm starting to think that this time, I better stop lying and spend the rest of my life loving her. This is a quote that took 130 chapters to culminate. This is a quote evocative of every single nook and cranny of this manga. This is a quote that took 2 relationships to be. This is a quote that has been building since the very beginning. This scene, by all means, reshaped this manga. This goes beyond just learning how to relationship and steps into territories of change. This quote reflects Saeko's growth as a person, not just a romantic partner. How Do We relationship thus far has been a sequence of failures. I think that's something many people overlook. Whether it's with Saeko, Miwa, Yuria, Tamaki, Rika, Ushi, Sudata, Luka, Mikun, anyone you can name in this story has at one point failed. Over and over, they have stumbled, whether in the context of a relationship or not. And oftentimes, after those failures, our characters gave up. But this one scene marked a new beginning. It's no longer, we failed, there's nothing we can do. It's, we failed, but we learned. A single scene composed of raw honesty, something that 100 chapters ago was unthinkable. That is how one scene reshaped this Yuri. And the fact that this scene is spoken by Saeko and not Miwa is just the cherry on top. Since her introduction, Saeko has been a character with a loaded background. She's had to conquer trial after trial. Between the two, she has easily been the most troubled. The fact that here, 130 chapters later, she's reached a point where she can be so honest with not only herself, but the crowd standing around her is awe-striking. I don't want to rant, but ladies and gentlemen, that is How Do We relationship in a nutshell. It's a story of change, of learning, of growth, but it's still a story where one sequence can change it all. Among the endless pool of substantial story-changing moments in Yuri, this takes the cake for me. But let me know down below what moment from any Yuri stood out to you. I'm curious, because really there are a lot. If you haven't already, again, be sure to subscribe. We're trying to hit 10K before the end of this year. Also, if you're interested, become a member, show your support. That would mean the world, and I'll see all you guys later. So, like, do you want to go out or what? Sure, you want to go out or what is pretty casual, but somehow, starting that way might just mean we'll end up together forever.